Good evening, everybody. This is Dante's Harmony podcast, and my name is Dante Harmon. I am so glad you've joined me on this Tuesday evening, 7 o'clock p.m., September the 30th. This is the last day of September. Wow, time has gone by very, very fast. We're like in the last quarter of the year. So thank you for joining us here on Dante's Harmony podcast. You're really going to be inspired today with my guest, who I'm going to bring up shortly. But for those of you all that are just coming in, please like and share this post. It's going to be a wealth of information that you all are going to receive on today that I know is going to be very influential and very substantial to you moving forward. For those of you all that have kids, for those of you all that may not have kids, you may be at a place where you're working, you're making good money, but what are you going to do with the money that you have for the remaining time as you go into your retirement, and what do you do with your financial planning? Have you thought about what you're going to do with your finances? If not, today's show is going to be specifically tailored just for you. I'm very excited. I think finances is something that we don't talk enough about, but we really need to expand our consciousness to deal with that aspect of our lives more and more every day. Why? I think it's so necessary because of where we are, the times that we're in. And for those of us that have kids, I like there's a scripture in the Bible that teaches us that we should leave an inheritance to our generation that we may not even meet, and the reality is that we are to leave that wealth for those that are behind us, so that they're not stuck trying to figure out what to do, right? So if you're unsure about where the state of your finances are, if you haven't started any planning as it relates to your finances, if you're dealing with someone that's sick or trouble not knowing what to do with the loved one or spouse or kid or whoever, and you're trying to figure out what I need to do, this podcast, this show today is going to be exactly for you. My guest today, he is a financial specialist, and he's all the way from a city I really love and very, very beautiful, St. Petersburg, Florida. And he has about 17 years of financial planning experience. He not only does he have financial planning experience, but he is the kind of person who knows how to plan, navigate you through situations. How do I know that? He's helped thousands of individuals help manage. He's really helped manage over $3 billion of client assets for Fidelity Investments. He started his own company, and I'm going to talk to him about that. What made him make that leap? He started his own company. After so long, when you start helping people and you start really understanding what to do, he started his own company in 2025 this year, and he is doing some amazing things. We're going to talk about his website. We're going to talk about what he's doing now. We're really going to dive into some unique conversation. But before we do anything, I want to bring my guest up. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome to the stage Mr. Breenan Decima. Breenan.
Thanks, Dante. Really excited to be here. Awesome opportunity. And I think tonight we're really here to make sure that people are positioned for the future. They understand what to do, how to do it. And I think there's going to be some great takeaways. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to kick this off.
I'm excited that you're here. We've had some conversations, and I'm really thrilled because your expertise and I think in my world, I'll talk about my world for a second. I'm a musician. I do a lot of creative content. And, even as an educator, I deal with a lot of people who really struggle with their finances. They don't know what to do, especially when they get up in age and they're trying to figure out, well, am I secure? Do I have enough saved, and do I need to be invested in stocks, and do I need to have this going or that going in? If something happens to a family, like what do I do? Trust versus this versus, it's so many things coming at us. So I think and let me say this too. A lot of my musician friends, we've had to bury a lot of people in our creative space, and at times, you know navigating through that when they did not plan a sudden or untimely death, put them in a position, or put their families in positions where they have to do the GoFundMe and do some things that are just really difficult in a moment or a time to navigate through that. And I want to help people to be proactive. So if that's my number one goal today, when we start our conversation and we dive into it, I definitely want to put some nuggets out here that give them some proactiveness on financial freedom.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Breenan, tell me a little bit about yourself, and we'll dive into this, man.
Yeah. So money is something that I've been fascinated with my entire life. And, I was fortunate. I started early. So I was 10 years old. I lived in Pennsylvania at the time.
Okay.
And candidly, one of those birthdays that I remember, not for the fancy presents, but
Right.
I got a snow shovel, right?
Okay.
And I remember that was the first year when snow days used to occur pre-Zoom learning, right?
Hmm.
It went from sledding and having fun with the kids in the neighborhood to going out and shoveling the neighbor's sidewalks and driveways.
Right.
And I remember the first $20 that I made. I remember my dad saying, "Hey, half of it you can put towards fun, right? And the
Hmm.
other half we're going to go pick stocks together."
Wow.
And I'm really glad he did this, because a year later, I mean, we were out of school. It was 1995. It snowed. It felt like every day that winter. I made a ton of money shoveling snow, but at that time they only gave annual statements. And when my annual statement came in a year later, my account had made more in the stock market than any of the money I had actually made shoveling snow.
Wow.
And it was this light bulb moment of, hey, if you can delay gratification, making money investing is much better than breaking my back accumulating, right? So
That's right.
I knew that I was going to go into money all along. Now, starting of my own company, I did that. My daughter was born New Year's Day this year.
Wow.
I've been doing this for a long time. My specialty has really been on helping people prepare and navigate retirement. I've helped thousands of people do that. Um, but I think what the catalyst for starting my own company was um, it started to feel like an assembly line. When you work for a large company, it becomes more about efficiency and key performance indicators and all of these metrics. And it felt like we moved away from what really matters, and that's understanding families and their biggest moments. So
Right.
I started the company so I didn't have, not that I don't like being efficient and not that I don't have my own definitions of success, but
Yeah.
finance is about the moments. And now I can do it on my terms and take as much time as I need with anyone I work with,
And
which
you want to keep the main thing the main thing.
correct.
That's what it
Yeah.
sounds like to me.
Money is personal, so it's not something we
That's
should
right.
rush through the conversation on. So that really was the catalyst for it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You're already dropping nuggets. One of the things I heard you say at 10 years old, your father got you into stocks at 10. Like that is that's a gem. If you're just listening, if you're just tuning in, start early with your, if you have kids, start early. Start early with the investment. Get them introduced to stocks. I'm curious, was there a particular stock that your dad had you go into?
Yeah, there was a couple, but I think the key is invest in what you know. So as a kid, companies like Disney and
Hmm.
Nike and, the local bank was Bank of America, right? So it wasn't trying to find the next hot tech company. It was, hey, what do I know?
Correct.
And have a little bit of a piece of that. And, I have a 5-year-old, and he's not investing in stocks yet, right? He's not. But I think that the key is teaching skills about delayed gratification. So I'm going to, Chuck E. Cheese is a favorite in our household, right? He loves playing arcade
Thank you.
games, and
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that too.
Okay.
But Chuck E. Cheese has this thing where you get tickets, and you can immediately take those tickets and go get a super cheap, dum dum lollipop,
Mm-hmm.
or a ring, or a little rubber snake, or you can save those and let that build, and you can get some pretty awesome
Yeah,
stuff on those higher shelves. So my
that's right.
son, we do the same thing. Hey, you can buy one lollipop, but the rest of that, let's find a higher goal for the future,
Right.
and let's set a target toy that we can work towards. And
I love
now
it.
now he's counting his numbers. He's watching it accumulate. So it's not the stocks, but it's the same concept that will get him into those habits down the road.
I love I'm so glad you said that. And I'm so familiar with the whole Chuck E. Cheese um, ticket scenario. My kids are adults now, but one of the things that I love to see, because every one of them had their different personalities, and there was one who they delayed their gratification and held on to those tickets. And when they held on to those tickets, it paid off because they were able to come home with some very cool, like, where did you get that? Oh, I saved my tickets, Dad. Oh,
It's not easy, but it
it's
pays
not.
off.
It's not. It's not. And but it makes so much sense that in that scenario, a lot of the kids, some wanted the candy, like you said, that lollipop, because for that moment. Hey, this is what I want. It looks good. It's sweet, and we have to delay the gratification in order to win in wealth. I love that.
Right. I think as adults, we all have our own modern day version of the dum dum lollipop of, hey, this feels really good in the present. Let's go spend, and just having that restraint of, there can be some much cooler things down the road if we were just a little bit more patient.
Well, man, you're already dropping some gems, and I just want to let people know. Listen, if you're gonna definitely have some questions as we go through this, and definitely want to follow Breenan, and this is his website that I have attached on the screen, Decima wealthy.com. Visit his website, and we're going to definitely promote this as we go throughout this particular interview. But I want to dive in a little bit and talk a little bit about some estate planning and some of the pitfalls that I see, or that you may see, when it comes down to estate planning. I'm just going to pretend, hey, I'm a novice. I don't know much about it, but I'm at a place where I know it needs to be done. We have some things that need to be solidified within this. How do I get started with estate planning?
Yeah. So I think there's a huge misconception that, estate planning is only for the ultra wealthy or people that are super old, right? Those are the two, hey, I'll deal with it down the road, or
Right,
I don't have enough to worry about it, right?
right.
And estate planning in a nutshell is, how do we, it doesn't eliminate the grieving, but
Hmm.
how do we make the mess less of a mess for those we care about, and our loved ones? And I think the easiest way to start is really sitting down and thinking about and writing down, if I'm not here, what does my loved one need to know? And that starts at very basic levels. What's the password for cable or the credit card bills? If
Right,
there's bill pay, what bills are getting canceled if my bank account's frozen, right?
right.
So inventorying all the stuff that's on your side of the ledger, and then really thinking about writing that down to make sure. And it's not just death. You have a stroke and you can't communicate. You have memory loss and you can't communicate. So if you can no longer act on your behalf, what needs to be told to your loved one or loved ones to replace your responsibility. That's where you start cataloging your responsibilities.
I love
Uh,
that. I love no that was great. Cataloging your responsibilities. That's great. You said something that I just kind of um wrote down as you started talking about what is my loved ones, what do they need to know? Like I think, and as you stated when you started talking, that this is not for the elite. This is not for the just the rich or the wealthy. You know, this is for everyone. But what does my loved one or what do my loved ones need to know that they may not know? And to help navigate through doing something like this. I just think that's big and important. Go ahead.
yeah, and you mentioned the scripture about leaving the inheritance, and I think the way I interpret that is not always monetary, right? There are
Right.
values that
Mm.
I absolutely want to make sure are here once I'm gone. But if we don't communicate those, sometimes we have a tough time verbalizing them. So estate planning is more than just, who gets the couch and the change shoved in the cushions of that couch. It's,
Right.
what do we want to continue on after we're gone? And there's polished ways of doing that, which we can get into. But at a very core level, it's, just making sure that your wishes are, heard.
That's right. That's right. So that is very good because I think a lot of people really are. That's something that those are some misconceptions that we don't really have to be involved in estate planning. That's something that is for the elite, and that's something that we don't have to delve into. But I'm so glad that you brought that out. I'm so also glad that you talked about the value system as it relates. It's not always monetary. It is. You're so right. That the value aspect of what's being taught, the morals, is so important. Moving forward, those kind of things have to be taught early and really play a big part in how things are carried out. If you would, do you? I don't want you to give away all the real estate secret or the I shouldn't say the real estate, but the estate planning nuggets, but what's one thing that if we had to go into estate planning that you would advise um, folks to do as they're setting that up?
Yeah, so I think at a bare minimum, it's really important to have a will.
Mm,
Uh, Now, the will essentially says what happens at death, who is going to get your stuff, right? So I
okay.
think that is critical because if you don't have it there, the state decides what happens to your stuff. And maybe it makes its way to who you want to make it to, but maybe it doesn't.
Right.
So I think that's step one.
Okay.
Step number two is a letter to your loved ones. And the letter to your loved ones is basically explaining what to do or what you've done and why you've done it. So, a really good example of that would be I have a lot of clients, unfortunately, that, one person was the financial decision maker. That person passed away, and the surviving spouse is, now dissecting every decision that was made you know, when she wasn't, involved with that. So the letter helps articulate here's exactly why I set it up. If it's not equal splits between the kids, here's what I was thinking. Maybe one kid got, a really valuable keepsake, right?
Okay.
And it's not even monetary. It may have just been a really sentimental. Well, there's no way to divide a watch in half, right? Or there's no way to divide a necklace in half. So there might be things where, hey, we had a really special bond over this baseball card at this event, right? So the letter helps explain that, but then it also explains everything you just wanted to communicate, right? So
Right.
I always think that, when there's a letter attached to the will, the look of relief in the loved one's face as they read that. Now, they may not always agree with it, but at least
Right.
they're not sitting there racking their brain for the next 3 decades wondering, why the heck something happened.
Right.
Now I always like to talk about this, and this isn't, an essential, but a lot of people think that the will is something that's going to allow them to continue on. So I know we had talked a little bit about royalties and where does that fit in retirement? Where does that fit in planning?
Right.
The will essentially is a point in time instruction. So at the moment of death, what happens at death?
Okay.
So a couple of just things the will doesn't cover. What if something happens before death, right? I had a client that had a stroke and he lost all ability to speak at 55.
Wow.
Well, the will doesn't give us anything
Right.
because he hasn't died. So he may live another 30, 40 years.
Right.
The will doesn't help, right? So
Mm.
a trust is going to have language in it of what happens if you're incapacitated. That is a big difference than a will. So a trust is, hey, if I can't handle my affairs while I'm living, who do I want to handle my affairs? And what do I want them to do? The second thing a will does not do is it doesn't control anything in the future. So
Mm.
it's going to say someone gets this at this particular time, and then they can do whatever the heck they want with it the next day.
Right.
Well, you may have, hey, I don't want this to be sold, or
Right.
I don't want this to transfer to this particular other family member if you pass away.
Right.
The will cannot put any future control on it. So the more control we want over the future, the less a will helps. The more we want to make sure we think about future generations and the day after the will is read, or the month after, the year after, the decade after, that's where trusts really come in. And again, trusts aren't always about, hey, I need a ton of money.
Right.
But the more control you want, the more a trust is going to make sense. And then the other thing that I think, again, this is the more creativity gets involved with this, a will is public.
Correct.
So when the will is read, that happens in front of a judge.
Okay.
So typically you're hiring an attorney. It's public. And it can be time consuming, whereas a trust is private. So the solicitors, the scammers, the people, the media, they're not able to search. So if you have something where a lot of creativity or just intellectual property is transferring,
Mm-hmm.
That's really where that trust is going to give that extra level of privacy that a will just won't accomplish.
Wow. Wow. You're dropping some nuggets. And this is some valuable information that most people don't know and really don't get. And for those of you all that are watching, you may want to, after this replay or after this live, to go back and listen to this particular section. This is some good stuff. The difference between a will and a trust. The fact that a will is public and trust are private. If you need to have something that is actual pointed at a certain time or intention, as you stated, it's more of the will. Did I say that correctly? That's more of the process of the will, where the trust gives more flexibility moving forward. Any type of circumstantial thing that may happen while living, the trust may be more of a benefactor to those that are involved.
Correct. And then the other thing, I could talk all day about this, but the trust is going to protect against creditors, lawsuits, and divorces. So I'll give you a really terrible story, right? I had a
Please.
client that passed away.
Okay.
They left a ton of money and a house to their son.
Mm-hmm.
And then a month later, their daughter-in-law divorced him and took half of the inheritance. So the trust can protect against a divorce. I've seen other scenarios where, the child was in the middle of a nasty lawsuit. They inherited money through the will,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of that went to the lawsuit. Whereas with the trust, it would have been protected from that. So the trust is going to add a level of protection that the will just doesn't add.
Gotcha. This is Dante's Harmony. I have here my guest, Breenan Decima. We're talking everything financial freedom on today, and he really just dropped some gems as it relates to estate planning. This is rich. This is rich, Brennan. Um, as we talked about estate planning, let me kind of transition a little bit at because we kind of talked about it, but we really didn't go into it. How do we prepare for when our loved ones leave here, and what does that all entail? I know we're talking about estate planning, but when we go into what should be like the first rule of thumb, what do we need to kind of do when we're losing someone close to us?
Yeah, so good question. I think, and this is probably the hardest thing to do,
Hmm.
but it's communication.
Mm,
So when they do all of these studies about the largest source of anxiety in senior citizens, it's making decisions on behalf of a loved one.
wow.
Um, because even if you know what to do, you second guess it if you haven't heard it directly from
From them.
them that you care about. So what that says to me is people are guessing. If you
We
had
are.
a conversation, the anxiety comes from the unknown, right? Well, if you had the
Right.
conversation, it becomes a known. It takes that anxiety off the plate. So I think, and I'm still working on this myself, but when you have loved ones that their health is failing, sitting down and having that conversation of what do you want? Who do you want to be in charge? Do you have it in writing? So
Mm,
most family strife comes from the fact that it's not in writing. So
wow.
let me give you a really good example. Let's say, and this is not applicable. I'm just using this as a hypothetical.
Sure.
But let's say I had a conversation with my mom, and she said, "This is exactly what I want. This is how I want you to do it. Go do it. X, Y, Z."
Okay.
Well, if it's not in writing, my brother could say, "Hey, I had the exact same conversation, and she said
The
the
exact
exact
same.
opposite." So now the two of us are saying, "Well, we both had the conversation."
Wow.
So writing is really going to help take the pressure off family strife. And I think the challenge here is in that scenario, chances are my brother and I are going to be the ones having the rift, right?
Right.
Because we're on different pages. Where if it's in writing, we may not agree with it, but it's not the other person's fault, right? It preserves that family bond. So the more that's in writing, the less family drama is going to occur. Now, again, that doesn't eliminate irritation and frustration. Everyone can feel slighted,
Right.
but you shouldn't feel slighted over your siblings. So money should be a blessing, not a curse. And where it's a curse is when everyone's fighting because everyone has a different opinion.
Right.
Take the opinion out of it, put it in facts, right? Facts should be in writing, and then opinions can be debated, but the facts are clear.
Wow. You said a mouthful. One of the things I want to highlight that you started out by saying is communicating. It's tough, and you stated it as well. And I struggle with it, but I'm learning to do it, and that's having the hard conversations, having those hard conversations. But you took it a step further. Not only having the hard conversations, but having the hard conversations and then putting it in writing.
Yeah, and, I think the other thing, and I'm learning this myself, but as a planner, I thought I did everything right with my wife. I put it in writing.
Sure.
I told her exactly what to do, and then we actually had a conversation a few weeks ago. We also have a podcast, my wife and I, and she told me, live in front of everyone, "Hey, I don't learn that way. I learn through doing." So when
Mm,
you're saying all this, it goes in one ear out the other. I'd like to sit down and see how you pay the bills. I'd like to sit down and see the savings account. So, that was a complete light bulb moment of everyone, even though it's in writing, for
mm,
her, that wouldn't be helpful. It would be, a Greek language to her. She doesn't understand any of this. So for me, I'm now thinking, all right, how do I get her more involved and show her?
wow.
So the same if, your loved ones, and, I talk about this a lot, if someone is deteriorating
Sure.
mentally,
Mhm.
um, you may realize it before they realize it, or they may not realize it at all because they're, past the point of realization, right? So oftentimes where I see people get themselves in trouble is they see a cognitive decline and they think, hey, I got to come in and I got to take everything over. You're not sharp enough. It's all mine now.
Right.
And now we're butting heads.
Right.
So I think the key is slowly building trust. Hey, I know you have a lot on your plate. Can I take care of some of the bill pay, right? Let me help you pay this bill. And that doesn't mean monetarily pay it, but let me see where the bills are going in. Or, oh, hey, I know you've been filing your taxes. Can I sit down with you to just, in case you can't do it? So pick one task, offer to help with it, build trust, and then slowly take over more and more control if they're cognitively declining.
Wow.
But when you try to take it over all at once,
It's
maybe you
overwhelming.
get lucky. It's rare that that's received well, though. It just doesn't happen often.
I like that. We have to take it a step further. After we write it down, we have to implement it.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing. Yeah, we need to implement it. We need to show them how it's done.
Right.
That makes so much sense. Again, if you all are just joining, I am here with my guest, Breenan Decima, and we're talking all things financial freedom. And you definitely want to visit his website and follow him, um, decimawealthy.com. And again, we're having a conversation right now, and this is some good. He's dropping some gems. So there's some things we talked about estate planning. We talked about what to do, and how to plan as we're losing our loved ones. Um, One of the other things that I think is so important, as I guess I should say, as a creative, I see a lot of my friends and people, even in the industry, in the music industry and movie industry, just mishandling funds. They don't, they make good money, but they're not channeling it properly. They're not investing properly. Um, there so many misconceptions. I know you have stories. Please feel free to tell them, because there's just so much that can be said about when I have the money and I do the wrong thing. When there's so much coming in, and I can do something with it, but I blow it because of, as what we stated earlier, delayed gratification. We're not really thinking about what we need to do for the future and to make our lives better. What are some things and some best practices? Again, I have a lot of colleagues who they're making good money. They do well. They're touring. They have good contracts with the large artists and just doing so many great things. But when it comes down to the finances, when it comes down to how they're handling their money, they miss it. What are some best practices? What are some things that, and I want to go beyond just the whole conventional saving. I really want to teach um, my peers what it is to invest. What is some advice or best practices that you can give as it relates to that?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. So I think first and foremost, I don't want to gloss over saving, but I think the key
Right.
is automating it.
Mm,
So we're all, I'm going to use cookies as an example. If
okay.
I go to a Super Bowl party and there's a plate of chocolate chip cookies and it's in front of me, restraint is incredibly hard, right? I can sit at that cookie platter the whole game. So if it's not in front of me, I'm not going to go make an effort, walk into the pantry, pull it out,
Right.
come back, go in. So the same applies to money. If it's in an easily accessible account, it's really easy to just keep dipping into it.
Right.
Incredibly easy. So automated savings, where before you even see it, it's in another account that you can't touch for a period of time,
Okay.
is really, really powerful, because human psychology says, hey, if it's available, I want it now. And
Right.
that's not just a money thing. That's a food. That's a shiny object.
It's a gratification thing.
We're
Need it
programmed that way,
now. Right.
right? So automation is key.
Right.
But the way that I think about it, Allen Iverson is a great example. I grew up, in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. Phenomenal basketball player for the Sixers. He was every kid's, in that area's idol growing up in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he went bankrupt, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what saved him was his advisor suggested he bought a annuity that turned on, 20 years after he retired with all of his Reebok money, and created that annual payment. And he's living a really high quality life off of that payment. Now, I'm not saying go buy an annuity, right? Maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't.
Sure.
But the point is he had someone say, here's money you cannot touch for 20 years.
Right.
And because of that, he's now able to live his life, even though he went bankrupt with everything else. And the same thing applies to all of us. Having a bucket, whether it's through an IRA or a deferred account that we just cannot dip our fingers in until the future, I think is step one.
Right.
Now, step two is, and you may or may not have heard this, but compounding is considered the eighth wonder of the world.
Okay.
So what compounding is you put money in, it earns money, but now you have a bigger balance earning even more money. So Warren Buffett is considered the most famous investor of all time, right? Most people are familiar with the Oracle of Omaha.
Right.
But the bulk of his wealth was made after the age of 65, and that's because of compounding. So let me give you a really good example. If you're invested in the stock market, historically, it doubles every 7 years. So let's just, put that into numbers. If you put money in today, let's just use $1,000.
Right.
In 7 years, it's 2,000. In 14 years, it's 4,000. In 21 years, it's 8,000. In 28 years, it's 16,000. Wow. So you've put 1,000 in, but you've made 15,000 from essentially just ignoring it.
Right.
And if you're adding to that, that number gets astronomically bigger.
Right.
So compounding, I think, is so key. And there's so many easy ways to do it with robo advisors and fractional investing. So, when I started investing, you essentially had to buy companies that you could afford, right? So if you had $20, you could buy a share of a company whose stock was less than $20.
Right.
Well, technology has evolved so much where you could go on Robinhood or you can go on Fidelity or Schwab and do fractional trading. So, let's say you want a share of, Tesla, let's stick with Berkshire. Berkshire trades for $500.
Okay.
Well, you could buy a fraction of that share for $20. So there's really no excuse, whether it's $1, $5, $10. There is no barrier. And the key is, hey, let's find companies that are leaders in our industry, or let's find an index fund that's just the U.S. economy. Hopefully, if we live here, we believe in it, right?
Right.
But that, to me, that's the key to getting started, is whether it's $1, or a Chuck E. Cheese ticket. Let's think about the future and what we can accumulate.
That analogy is going to forever stick with me because I want that big prize.
The big prize is down the road, but it starts with small tickets adding up.
That's right. It starts with the small tickets. For those of you all that are just joining us again, I'm here with Breenan, and we're talking all things financial freedom, and he is really dropping a wealth of information for us on today. And I just think for those that are listening, and if you just caught the last 5 to 10 minutes of this conversation, he's really giving and dropping some jewels for us. So this is really good. So there's really no excuse, because there's so many different facets and ways that we can invest, that we can save, as you said, automatically save our money, where we put it on automation, so that it's working for us and it's going the places that we really want it to go, so that it will help compound or go into that compounding, as you started talking about, with the different stocks, that we'll start to see something, wow, in the future, that we never thought this one investment would yield this result. I just think that's important.
Yeah, and I think, the stock market is a massive media draw, right?
Mhm.
There's headlines about the stock market going up and down politically. People talk about how politics can influence the market. So there's a lot of fear over, well, I could lose everything if I invest, right?
Right.
So the way that I think about investing is there's always the risk, and this is the same whether your money is coming from royalties or you work for a corporation, but spreading the risk is key, right? So if all of your money is going into one company and you pick the wrong company, yeah, you're in harm's way, right?
Right.
But if we're thinking about, hey, what are the companies that I use every single day, right? And I'm not, this is not an endorsement, but I'm just thinking about a basic. You go out in the neighborhood and every stoop has Amazon boxes, right? Before
Right.
I logged in, your podcast told me I needed Google Chrome. I logged in on my Apple MacBook, right? So what I look at is, what do I use every single
Every
day?
single day.
And if that person came to me and said, hey, I'm going to give you a chance to invest in this company, and the word stock wasn't involved, I say, yeah, yeah, absolutely, right?
Mhm.
But because it, is on the media and we hear about every dip or bump, it can be really stressful. But the key is, hey, pick a couple really good companies or an index fund that are the leaders,
Right.
and just ignore it. And that tends to be the key to success. Now, when I say ignore it, the world changes, right? So today it's Amazon. It used to be Walmart. It used to be Sears.
Correct.
Things change. But if you're no longer using it, that's when you make a switch. And those are things that robo advisors can help with, mutual funds can help with, professional advisors like myself can help with. But the key is to just start somewhere.
And for those that are not as financial literate, you said spreading the risk. I heard, and I know you didn't say the word, but diversification. Is that kind of the same, where you don't put all your eggs in, as they say, in one basket? You want to diversify. And
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is true, with anything in life, right? So if we wake up and we know that bananas are good for us, but
right.
all we ever eat is bananas, we're not getting any protein, we're not getting any fat. So yeah, bananas are good, but you need other stuff, right? And
Right.
that's how I look at investing. We want, a couple different things to represent different industries, right? So we don't want everything in one company. We want, you know, things for our daily, the toilet paper companies and the toothpaste companies, the energy companies where we pump our gas, the tech companies for our computer. So we want a little bit of everything.
Right.
That way, if there's ever a rough patch, we've got other things that are, helping minimize our impact.
Absolutely. This is good. Again, for those of you all that are watching, thank you for being here with us on today. We're talking all things financial freedom. I'm here with Breenan, Decima, and I am really, really just gleaning from this conversation, about financial freedom. And I think this is something that we really, really should take a look at more closely within our personal selves. Are we doing what's necessary to get us ahead? And are we thinking about our kids? Are we thinking about our future? And right now is the time to do it, right? So this is great. As you were talking, I started thinking about, um, financial advisors, how a lot of people may not understand the stock game. They may not understand, how to. They may not understand the basics of real estate planning, or just estate planning, or just a lot of things financially. Is there any advice, or do you have any? Yeah, I would say, do you have any advice, or could you lead us to just any type of resources that will help just the average person understand, um, what these things mean, or just defining basic terminology. We're throwing out some terms that a lot of people may not understand or get. How could they become more financial literate?
Yeah, so there are so many. So I think the first thing, and I know this is on YouTube, but I think the first thing is there's so much.
I'm glad
In,
you said that. I'm glad.
yeah,
I'm glad you're going this route
there's
because
so much
I'm a YouTube. I'm a
information.
YouTube junkie.
Yeah, so I think the challenge is there's so much information on social media that you really, really can get in trouble.
You could. You could.
So you don't need to have all kinds of certifications and licenses to do that. Now, fortunately, I do, right? But
Right.
if your sole if every tax tip you get is from TikTok, you have a high probability that one of them is going to be wrong, and the
Correct.
IRS is going to come knocking on your door, right?
Right.
So I think from a starting standpoint, whether it's my website or any of the major um, asset managers, so Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, they've got a learning center.
Okay.
And all of those companies, I think, are really, really good at it. Does not matter if you're 12 years old starting to invest or 100 years old trying to plan for your loved ones. They have these topics. So, getting started investing, getting started with retirement planning, getting started with estate planning. And if you're a reader, great. There's some really good articles, but all three of those companies have some really good, just 3 to 5 minute videos for each topic, which I find super, super helpful. So that's where I would start. And then the other thing is just there's a lot of really, really good books out there.
Yes.
Um, whether it's investing for beginners or retirement planning for beginners or estate planning. So I think I'm someone that loves the local library. I go down to the local library and I just look at what are the top books in the category and have some fun with it. And you get some good stuff. If you have insomnia, it's really good for that as well. So it helps all
Yes.
all kinds of things.
I agree. This is so good because I'm a bookworm as well, and there are so many great resources. What I tend to do is find a credible person and find their YouTube page, and I start to go into their content because they drop a wealth of information. That's one of the ways that I delve into it. I start following them, and I start to expand even more because of the information that they give, because I already follow them and it's something that I'm doing. I've read the books and it's like, oh yeah, this particular person is so amazing. So that was great. That was great because I tend to do that, even with companies.
Yeah, what I like about YouTube, not just for finance, but for everything,
Everything.
we're having issues around the house, I'm going to check YouTube before I call a professional. Um, I think the key is everyone has an opinion.
Right.
So the key is to separate who's giving an opinion and who's actually giving facts,
Correct.
because opinions are really social media's challenge. But if it's how to do this and it's a clear instruction and it's a credentialed individual on YouTube, I mean that's the best way to do it, right? It's free advice.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is so important. And yeah, they have there's so much out there. YouTube is just oversaturated to an extent too, of just information, with as well as other social media outlets and different social media sites. So much, so much.
Yeah.
I want to go into a little bit before we stop. We talked about a lot of different things, but I want to go into what um, you may talk, or I hear a lot of financial folks talk about as it relates to maybe budgeting. What are your views on budgeting? Is this something that do you think it's a rule that we should budget, or a system we should get into as our careers grow, as we start to make even more money, or things our streams of income even increase, trying to figure out how we manage all of this stuff, Is there a system, or do you have a, a suggestion as it relates to even financial planning, or having a financial planner to help with these things as you start to increase in income and things of that nature? What would be your advice in how to move?
Yeah, so I think budgeting gets a bad rap, right? No one wants to, money is incredibly personal. If you're sitting there being forced to look at what you spent, you might not always be proud of that. You may have some guilty feelings. So budgeting gets a bad rap, right?
Right, right.
So I don't think, and I'll be really clear about this. I don't think it is an absolute essential to budget unless you're not achieving your savings goals, right? So if
Mm.
every month you're saying, man, I don't have anything left to invest, or I don't have everything left to save, then I think it's really, really important to look at the budget. Because what happens, and I'm incredibly guilty of this as well. So when I started off in 2008, I was making entry level pay,
Okay.
and my salary over 5 years doubled. And then it actually went up higher than that over 10 years.
Okay.
But I found out that I was actually taking from my bank account. So I
Mhm.
was making substantially more and I was dipping into my savings. So what I found, I went back and budgeted, and I realized I was spending a heck of a lot more than I thought once I factored in taxes. So I'd hear this, oh, here's your pay raise. And I'd go get a new car payment. I'd go buy nicer suits. I'd go buy a new watch. And I wasn't considering taxes at all.
Wow.
And now I'm actually, even though I'm making more than I've ever made, I'm actually losing net worth. I'm taking away from what I've built. So for me, budgeting was incredibly critical to know where my baseline was. And then if I'm making more, I should be saving by an equivalent increase. So if my pay goes up 10%, my savings should also increase by 10%. And
Right.
if they're not, then we really need to look at that budget, right? And there's so many free tools online of just, whether it's Rocket or Mint or you name it, there's a free budgeting tool.
Right.
I do think it's incredibly important to have that baseline. The other thing I would say is when I left, I had a comfortable salary with comfortable benefits. I left 2 weeks after having a newborn, right? My daughter was born January 1st. I left January 17th.
Wow. You took
The
a step.
only, yeah, the only way to do that is to know my budget, right? I can't say, hey, I'm going to go from a salary to zero clients, zero income,
Right.
unless I have an exact ledger of here's what I need to make and then
Mhm.
a plan to go do it. So the more we want to think about financial freedom, the more a budget comes into play. But if it's just, hey, I'm saving tons of money, well, you don't need to go add up every Starbucks coffee you buy,
Right.
right? So,
That's right.
yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
No, that was very helpful, and I think that's very, very important. We have to count the cost.
Yeah.
I remember when they were trying to build, and Jesus was instructing, "Can I have you counted the cost?" I think that goes into that. Do we count the cost of doing what's needed to be done? You talked about this, and I'm gonna dive into some of your stories. But you reducing taxes. You started talking about taxes a little bit as we started talking about the budgeting. But how do we go into reducing our taxes? Most of I should say, especially in my world, with creatives and musicians, they're doing pretty good, but they're not. So some are not substantially doing, like they would want to do. But when it comes tax time, they are losing because they don't know what to do. Um, what are the benefits of having corporations, or setting up a business, or whatever it is deemed necessary to help reduce taxes,
Yeah. So,
especially as a musician, or as a creative?
yeah. So I think one, if you actually have a formed business, you can deduct business expenses. So being able to offset some of the income is critical.
Right.
Now with, creatives, a lot of it is royalties. So royalty is going to have self-employment tax on it, right? So you
Right.
have ordinary income and self-employment. So a lot of people don't think about that for the future.
Right.
What many people are unaware of is that self-employment tax continues in perpetuity, right? So let's say you wrote the song, made the song 10 years ago, you retire, you're still paying that self-employment tax on it. So having ways to offset and deduct that through business expenses is really important. Two, having tax friendly vehicles to accumulate your other savings so you're not adding to the problem. So let me give you a really good example.
Okay.
Let's say at the end of the year, you have an extra $5,000 to save. Option one is you can throw that in your bank account, and that $5,000 is now earning interest, which is good. You save, step one, great.
Right.
But that interest is all taxed as ordinary income.
Okay.
So you have a couple options. One, you could put it into a traditional IRA. And what that does is now you have a $5,000 deduction against your income. Or you could put it into a Roth IRA where now all of the earnings are tax free. So you don't get a deduction, but the interest on your savings, you're never going to pay tax on again.
Correct.
So the tax efficient vehicles are just really, really powerful. And maxing those out or getting as close to maxing those out to me is tax move number one.
Right.
The other thing that I see people regularly do is, when you have a 9 to 5 and you work for a corporation, the income comes and the company withholds taxes.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Well, what often happens is people that work for themselves, they make money throughout the year, tax season comes, they file their taxes, they owe their taxes. Well, what a lot of people don't know is the IRS, your taxes are actually due throughout the year as you earn it.
Correct.
So if you're not making estimated payments, you're going to have a penalty most likely at the end of the year when you file. And that penalty is accruing interest as well. So I think it's really, really critical if you are working for yourself to at least make sure you have an understanding of what you owed the year before.
Right.
And set aside money to send to the IRS quarterly. And again, I'm not a CPA. Actually, we met through a CPA.
Yes, we did.
Don't worry, right?
That's right.
But I think the key is, even if you don't use them forever, once you have a good understanding of what you make, hire a CPA or go on TurboTax, understand what the next year might look like, and then just create a plan with the CPA or TurboTax to avoid that penalty and interest in future years.
I'm so glad you said that, because it's so important that we not listen to not credible sources, if for lack of better terms. Right. We were introduced to each other through a CPA, and I think it's so important that we really listen to credible voices, people who are licensed, people who are certified in the particular area of expertise, because as you stated, I don't know how to do this, but they do. And I think that's very, very, very important. I'm so glad you said that. And I'm so glad you talked about that, and even paying quarterly if there was something, because we have to forecast. We have to forecast certain things that we know we're going to have to, that we're going to owe. And forecasting helps us look and project, okay, we're getting ready to go into the next quarter. What am I going to have to put aside so that I can pay toward these taxes that I owe? So I think that's important. And thank you for even bringing that up. Man,
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say the credible sources. I mean, think about breaking your leg. You're not going to go into your phone book and say, oh, this guy my friend broke his leg 2 months ago. He should tell me how to fix it, right? Because he's
Right.
broken his leg.
Right.
You're going to call a doctor, right? So when you hear other people are retiring, or you hear other people filed their taxes, great, but they're not professionals. Their situation may be completely different. Your bone may be completely different than your friend's bone. So you need to go get your own x-rays and talk to your own doctor.
That's right.
so you get the right prescription, right? And the
That's
same
right.
is true with your finances and
With your
taxes.
finances. That's good. That's good stuff. It seems like when we're having fun, we start to run out of time. I don't want to keep you long. We're at about an hour already.
That flew by.
I know it really has. So a couple of things, and we'll get going. One of the things you talked about are some of the horror stories that you've been faced with when it comes down to finances and financial freedom. You shared a couple with us today. And I want to kind of tie in with this question. Is this something that you're working on with the book that you're coming out with? Are these horror stories going to be in the book? Because even the things that you talked about in your analogies were spot on. I don't think I'm going to ever forget the Chuck E. Cheese ticket analogy. That for me was everything. Like, when you want to talk investment, that hit it on the head for me. Talk a little bit about the book that you're working on, and some of these horror stories. Are they going to be in the book?
You're a mind reader. So we actually haven't, other than me telling you that I was writing a book, but retirement and financial planning, there are, I think it's something like 7,000 books on Amazon of here's what to do, and it's telling you what to do, right?
Right.
Which is great, right? But
Right.
that book's been written. I've worked with a couple thousand clients over the last 17 years, and I can vividly recall about a dozen of what didn't go right. So my book is solely focused on what you shouldn't do in retirement, not what you should do.
Right.
And that's really told through the lens of some of the unfortunate scenarios. And I think what's really stood out to me is there's so many ways to accumulate wealth. There's so many ways to make money. We all have our different talents. We can all accumulate. So when you see people that actually have succeeded really, really successfully, that then manage to lose it, that's what the book is talking about. Because I've seen people be scammed out of millions of dollars. I've seen people go from 10 million to zero. Uh, I've seen family fist fights at the wake. So I've seen just the sad side of finances. So I'm a big believer, and I said this earlier, wealth should be a blessing and a tool to make your life and your family's life better. It should not be a curse that pulls the family apart. So the book is talking about some things to just words of caution along the way.
I love it. I love it. I know it's going to be a bestseller, and I know it's going to help a lot of families and people who are really, really struggling in that area that want to glean and learn from the mistakes of others. So I'm excited. Definitely let me know when that book comes out so we can do another one of these and talk about it.
I would love that.
I would love to bring you back and we delve into some of those stories and talk about that book. But thank you so much, Breenan. We can go on for so many things that people really, really, really need to know about their finances and having financial freedom. But you help to unlock so many things, so many myths, and so many nuggets that people can actually use and glean from in bettering their financial freedom. If there's a few things that you want to leave with our listeners on today, just some nuggets that you want to drop before we tune off, I'm going to give you the floor. And I definitely want everyone to go to his website and definitely support, definitely gather information. He's a wealth of information, as you can hear here today on the podcast. But I went on the website. He has a plethora of information out there for you. Definitely visit. Again, it's DECIMA wealth.com. Breenan, what say you? What are some nuggets that you wanna leave our audience on today?
Yeah, so I would say one, it's an honor and a privilege, and most importantly, it's been a ton of fun. So thank you. I really
Thank you.
enjoyed this. Two, It's never too late or too early to start planning. So, um, I'm in my 30s. I thought I was too young for estate planning, and then I had a major medical issue that completely opened my eyes of, hey, practice what you preach. You're telling people it's not too early. Go make sure your wife is in good shape, right? So it's never too early to get your affairs in order. On the other side of that, I have a lot of people that are saying, oh, I never thought about retirement and now it's sneaking up on me. Well, it's never too late to start thinking about what's next and start putting some money away. So the sooner you start investing, the better off the future will be. Uh, we've had some pretty amazing technology with some pretty amazing health advancements. We may live a heck of a lot longer than our parents did.
You're right.
So it might have been too late for them, but it doesn't mean it's too late for you. So just start somewhere. And if anyone, just wants to have a conversation, my email, Breenan at Decima Wealth. You can schedule an appointment on the website. I'm here to help. So
Wow.
hopefully this was a good use of everyone's time.
It definitely wasn't mine. And for those that are listening, I'm sure it has been for them. And again, for those who are, like and share this post, I think it's going to be very beneficial to the lives of your relatives, friends, and anyone that struggles with their finances and just wanting that freedom. I think there's some very, very good stuff that you shared with us on today. Thank you, Brennan. I really appreciate this. This is awesome. Again, there's a website on the screen there for you. And again, thank you. I definitely want to have you back. Let me know when that book comes out.
Likewise.
I'm sure those stories are going to just be priceless. And again, I know there are going to be a lot of life lessons within the context of your book. So thank you again. And for those that are watching on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for joining us on tonight with my guest, Breenan. And again, visit his website. You'll find a wealth of information. And if you need to contact him, his email is on the website. You want to give him that email address one more time?
Yeah, it's my name, Breenan at decimawealth.com. And my calendar, there's a appointment scheduler right on the website.
Thank you again, Breenan. And again, I appreciate you taking out time and just talking and just giving practical, just everyday experiences that we all can glean from and learn from. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. And again, Facebook, YouTube, thank you all for tuning in to Dante's Harmony Podcast. Appreciate you. We'll see you very, very, very soon.